Hello and welcome to another episode of Ted's 10, the show in which I, a guy called Ted, give you my top 10 things of a thing. Yeah, it's that simple, much like you watching this video until the end and pressing that like button. Oh, go on, it's Christmas, please. Today I'm gonna be doing something slightly different and taking a trip down memory lane. As a kid in the 90s, I grew up on Britpop, and that influenced my taste in music. So, in this list, I'm gonna give you, in my opinion, the 10 best Britpop bands. But what is Britpop? You easily ask. Well, I suppose it is hard to define, but for me, it's a movement in the 90s that peaked about the mid-90s that kind of put Britishness and British music back on the map. It was like an antidote to grunge. It wasn't particularly angry. It was British bands taking influence from a few 60s bands, particularly the Beatles, the Who, and the Kinks, and kind of revitalizing that sound, bringing it to the 90s youths. And for a few years in the 90s, that seemed to work. In my opinion, Britpop died in 1997, where one band whom will feature on this list put out an album that, despite selling millions, was an absolute stinker. And another band who were kind of rivals with that band put out an album too that was actually pretty damn good, but kind of distanced themselves from their original quintessential British sound. So here, in my opinion, is the 10 best Britpop bands. Okay, at number 10 is Ocean Colour Scene. Now, this is a band I put at number 10 because they had the potential to be absolutely superb, but I think they never really truly polished their identity. They were touted for their links to Paul Weller, and their guitarist was in Paul Weller's band. However, I think that underplayed the kind of bluesy vibe they had, so they were kind of in two camps. But that said, at their best, they were brilliant. Their Mosley Shows album from '96 was superb. The opening track, the Riverboat song, is just the most wonderful, bluesy, heavy, driving piece of music you can think of. They definitely brought something to the Britpop movement, even if that thing was largely in the past. Okay, at number 9 is Supergrass. To be honest, I could easily put this band higher, but their debut album came out in 1995, and the second album came out in 97. Again, a kind of heavier sounding album, which kind of marked the decline of Britpop, I feel. So they're only going in at number 9. But having said all that, the debut album, I Should Coco from 95, just showed so much of the band's potential and brought something so unique to the Britpop movement. You had the opening track, Caught by the Fuzz, a big walking, punky number that really set the album off. But also you have the big single, Alright, a kind of piano-based poppy sing-along that became quite unthematic, but it's just superb. And you also got the closing track, Time to Go, a kind of country-ish ballad, slightly quirky in itself, so they kind of mixed so many styles, yet made it theirs, and kind of made those styles Britpop. Okay, at number 8 is Pulp. Now, Pulp are an interesting band. They were in fact formed in the original form in 1978 and were underground doing their own thing for quite a while. But it's only when the Britpop movement exploded they really found themselves. It was the albums His and Hers from 94 and A Different Class from 95 which really brought Pulp onto the Britpop scene. I admit I found Pulp a bit too poppy at the time, but you could hear they were elder statesmen just by the sophistication they came with. The lyrics are full of social commentary. They sing a lot about sex and class, like the big hit Common People. A really interesting band that proved themselves and Britpop to be a force to be reckoned with. Okay, at number 7 is Suede. Now, I don't see this band as completely dissimilar to Pulp, because they too kind of want something really kind of sexual and androgynous to the Britpop scene, but as well as that could definitely work out. Imagine heavy guitar-based rock with a touch of glam. That's kind of what Suede did, but with very intelligent social commentary. Wed Anderson's vocals too kind of high-pitched and somewhat slightly whiny, but in the context of Suede, it works to define their sound. I think he's a great vocalist. Check out songs like Film Star, Animal Nitrate, and Star Crazy. They are such brilliant, infectious melodies over some walking guitar, and it was just epic. Okay, at number 6 is Gene. Of all the bands I can think of that fall under Britpop, Gene seem to be the ones that get critically overlooked, and I don't quite know why, because they were superb. Kind of a mix between the Smiths and the Small Faces, but it kind of worked. In fact, it did work. Their debut album, Olympian, came out in 1995 and gave such a snapshot of Britain at the time. They were youths from London, and there's a lot of references to pubs, and this whole album just captured such a feel of London in the mid-90s with an equal balance of hope and despair. Gene then went on to make more experimental records after the demise of Britpop, which were equally superb, but this one album, I feel, did so much for Britpop and defines it so well. Okay, at number 5 is the Charlatans. These guys were another band who established themselves early, but managed to ride the wave of Britpop very successfully. They formed in the late 80s, and by 1990 they put out their iconic single, The Only One I Know, which kind of sounds like a mixture of The Birds and Deep Purple's Hush, but is great, and you just know it every time you hear it. But what I love about the Charlatans is their versatility. They could write a song true to their roots like North Country Boy, a simple guitar song about growing up where they did, but they could also get really funky. They had a Hammond organ in their band, which just added that extra element and gave them scope to be more creative. A great band. Okay, at number 4 is the Bluetones. Okay, maybe a bias then I've included this band a bit high, as they only made one album and a few singles before 97. That key iron curtain here in terms of Britpop, but I just think this band were truly wonderful and very underrated. The guitarist Adam Devlin would come up with these truly ingenious, brilliant guitar parts, and his sense of light and dark, where he could play quite heavy for 1 minute, then do the light, picky, jangly stuff effortlessly, was just so unique. And that combined with Mark Morris's softer, melodic vocal seemed to work perfectly. The heaviness of the guitar and the lightness of Mark's singing. This group of Hounslow guys a true force to be reckoned with. And now at number 3 is Oasis. Right, as much as I hate the Gallagher brothers, you just simply cannot deny the impact Oasis had on Britpop and music in general, just putting guitar back on the scene. In fact, they were so powerful that I'd say the third album in 97, be it rather bad, contributed spectacularly to Britpop's downfall. In fact, if you pinned Britpop's downfall on one event, it would be Oasis putting out their stinker third album. But even as a 7-year-old kid, I remember just the impact of the second album. What's the Story, Morning Glory? And you also have to mention their first album, Definitely Maybe, which made my top 10 debut albums. Just the rawness and the sheer energy on that album is just like something from another planet. That album just kind of brought Britpop into the mainstream and made it known you don't have to play your instruments particularly well. You just need swagger, and boy, they had so much swagger. And the second album, Morning Glory, showed they could add some depth to that swagger. Okay, I admit, with the help of ripping off other people's songs, but swagger nonetheless. And the fact that 26 years later, buskers are still being requested to play Wonderwall shows just what an impact this album still has. Whether you like them or not, Oasis have to be at number 3. Okay, at number 2 is Manic Street Preachers. Well, what can I say? I guess living in Cardiff for 50 years, I consider myself kind of Welsh, therefore have to put the Manics highly. But I can think of few bands who brought as much power and passion to Britpop as the Manics. United by anger and a true sense of Welsh identity, you could just feel everything in their music, whether it was the early punky album or the 96 album, Everything Must Go, which really brought them to the Britpop scene. The 96 album, Everything Must Go, was made just after the rhythm guitarist Richie Evans went missing, and you can hear they're just so raw and naked here. They're pouring every bit of emotion into this record, and it's painful but also wonderful. Long live the Manic. And now I give you my number 1 Britpop band, which is Blur. I have a confession. In 1995, you had to either like Oasis or Blur. Both bands had 2 big albums, or in fact massive albums, which were in competition, and at the time I went with Oasis. But now I'm not a 7-year-old boy. My opinion has changed somewhat. In fact, I feel Blur were in a totally different class. Blur brought so much intelligence to their music, and they clearly respected their elders. You could hear influences in their sound, like the Kinks. That is, influences rather than directly ripping the previous bands off, as perhaps did Oasis. Their album in 97, which may have contributed to Britpop's demise too, did so because it was totally different, unique, heavy, and American sounding. It wasn't a bad album. In fact, it was a brilliant album. It just wasn't particularly Britpoppy, which again shows that Blur had the ability to evolve throughout their career. Just listen to great songs like Charlatans, Man, Country House, or even the slightly irritating but fun song Park Life. They just knew how to write the hooks. The songs were just so catchy, but catchy without being cheesy. They were such an intelligent band, and that's why in hindsight I think they're the best band of the Britpop era. Okay, did you enjoy this video? If so, please be sure to tell me what you think in the comments. Give it a like and maybe think about sharing it with your friends. Thank you.